Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar on invoice processing using intelligent automation. I'm your host Shelly and I handle marketing initiatives at Navitas. Before we begin, let me share quick guidelines. If you face any technical difficulty with audio or video or wish to ask any questions, please use the chat window on the side of the control panel. We will resolve any issues immediately and we will save time at the end of the presentation to review any questions related to presentation or in general. We will also share the recording of the webinar via email, and the same recording will be available on our website following the presentation today. So let me open the presentation with a brief introduction of Navitas. I will then hand it over to Alan Hester. Navitas has been operating for 8 years. We have offices in India, UK, and the US. We really focus on helping our customers to succeed with their digital transformation goals by leveraging our vast experience in the process automation space. We offer vertical solutions that are RPA and AI enabled and built on configurable process automation capabilities to empower businesses to operate with agility and flexibility. So that was a brief overview about Navitas company. Now I would request Alan to take it forward. Alan?
Thank you, Shaylee. Let's start off today with a question for everyone, just so that I can see where we all stand. And you should get something popping up on your screen that is asking you how much automation you've pursued in your invoice processing so far. So I'm just going to leave this up for a minute or so to give you time to answer, so I can understand where everyone stands currently. I'm guessing that most people are at least interested in using automation for their invoice processing, or else you probably would not have joined the webinar today. But I'm not sure if everyone is currently doing it or just thinking about doing it. It looks so far, based on the responses, like most people are saying that they're doing everything manually today, which is good. That's what the webinar is all about. So I'm going to just leave this open for maybe 10 more seconds, and then we'll close that off so that we can get started. Okay. Very good. So let's start out by looking at robotic process automation, and it will become clear to you why we're talking about this. And maybe some of you have already heard about this, or you've heard the acronym RPA mentioned before, but I just wanted to kind of give at a high level what it is and what it's not. RPA is really just a technology tool to make it easier to automate manual repetitive tasks using business rules. There are software-based bots that can access all of your existing systems through the user interface. So it doesn't require any kind of programming or APIs or code to be written. And then there's also workflow enabled through this, so that you can keep track of not just the automated tasks, but also the human tasks as well. So what RPA is not, and sometimes people are confused by this, there is no physical robot. It's not a Danger Will Robinson kind of situation for those of you familiar with Lost in Space. RPA can't replace humans completely, and it can't do human thinking, real cognitive type work. It can make simple decisions based on rules that can be defined in advance. And one other thing that is good to remember is that RPA is not just used for cost-cutting purposes. There are a lot of other good reasons why you would want to use RPA. So now that we've gone through that, let's look at places where RPA can be really useful. And some of these we've mentioned already. doing repetitive tasks that people are doing just because there's no easier way to get it done. And these are usually things that employees don't want to be doing, and it's not a part of their official job description. And yet they have to do it usually to serve as the bridge between two different systems that don't talk well to each other. So that's the next place where RPA is very useful, is where you're needing to integrate systems that aren't integrated on their own. You maybe don't have the technical resources available in your organization to do the integration, or maybe you just don't have time, but for whatever reason, you're unable to do the integration yourself, and RPA can be very useful in that case. RPA is also very good for doing reporting and dashboards where data is getting pulled from different systems. So in the same way that systems aren't able to talk together in terms of the operational side, on the data side, that can also be the same kind of situation. And RPA is able to pull that data together for reporting and dashboarding. And then the other thing is fast information gathering, or really fast doing any kind of manual process. You know, something that a call center agent is having to do on the side while they're talking to someone that might take some time and distract them from their conversation. That's the kind of task that an RPA bot can do very easily. And then compliance and regulatory issues, I think, are definitely sweet spots for RPA, because RPA will create an audit trail in cases where a process had been ad hoc previously. So you have kind of a process created, and each step within it is going to be tracked in terms of who is completing it, the start time, end time, and that can be really useful if you're in an industry where it's important to keep track of that, or maybe you have to do audits or you have other compliance issues. And then data validation and data conversion, that kind of ties into what we already talked about from a reporting standpoint. So there's not much more to say about that. Okay, so now let's get on to the invoice processing part of this, which is what we really want to look at today. And I'm sure those of you that are doing manual invoice processing today can understand these statements that are made by different research organizations talking about how much of typical invoice processing is manual and how long it can take to do that. There's a lot of other issues related to manual invoice processing as well, and we'll look at some of those here. Compliance, we already talked a little bit about the importance of compliance and what RPA can do for compliance. But from the standpoint of manual invoice processing, when you're doing everything manually and paper-based, it's very hard to report on any of that or do any kind of audit trail or reporting or documentation for reviews, anything like that. From a cost standpoint, obviously doing things manually is always going to be the more expensive way. Uh, Limited visibility of liabilities, not knowing where you stand from a financial standpoint. Um, Obviously not the best way to be operating your business. Same thing with preparing accruals, kind of the opposite side of that same coin. Inability to leverage early payment discounts. This is one that I think it applies not just to early payment discounts, but it also applies to being able to take advantage of your buying power. You know, when you're processing everything manually and you don't have good visibility into the numbers in terms of how much business you're doing with each vendor and the volume of each product, all of those things can be stumbling blocks for you getting the most for your money in terms of your dealings with your vendors. And then the last thing on the list there is poor vendor relations. And there's a lot of different things that could be related to poor vendor relations that comes out of doing things manually. So with automation, how can we change all of this? So with automation, we can take the data from all your different kinds of invoices that you receive, whether those are physical invoices that you're receiving on the loading dock manually and scanning them in, or if they get emailed or faxed to you, or you have some kind of EDI through existing systems. The intelligent automation is able to deal with the invoices from all of those sources. It can also, once it has those invoices in whatever electronic format, do classification and sorting of those invoices, duplicate checking, data validation against ERP or anything else. I think this is one of the things that RPA is very good at in general, is being able to do reconciliation from one data source to another. And invoice processing is no exception there. And being able to flag exceptions as well as different approval paths and routing, automated tasks and reminders for payments, as well as other parts of the process flow as well. Uh, and then the seamless flow of information through discrete systems and the reporting and analytics that we have already talked a lot about. So let's look a little bit more at what this can look like from a flow perspective. I think you probably can all recognize here that as we talked about, you're receiving these invoices in a lot of different ways from a lot of different vendors. And in many cases, you don't have much control over how you receive them. And that can be a difficulty when you look at other invoice processing systems that are out there. You know, they're going to want you to conform to doing things a certain way, and getting everything in that format often just adds more manual work to your plate, and you end up having a semi-automated process that really isn't saving you any time, because it's also going to add on additional manual work. So using RPA at the center of this, obviously we can cut out a lot of that manual processing, and we'll show you in a demo a little bit how this flow works. So if you're looking at this chart and thinking, well, this looks really complicated, I'll show you through a demo how simple that can be. So when you're able to automate things, let's look at what some of the benefits are. Obviously, improved turnaround time, increased transparency, being able to know what's going on in your organization, better compliance and process control, improvement in accuracy, reduced human errors and therefore reduced costs, improved cash flow, improved vendor relationships, and better customer satisfaction. Another thing that's on this list, or that should be on this list that we don't have on there, is it can also help with employee satisfaction, because the people who are currently responsible for doing those manual tasks, which could include some of you who are listening to the webinar today, are going to be much happier when they're not having to do those things manually anymore. So let's look quickly at a few case studies. We have implemented automated invoice processing for a number of companies in a number of different ways. So this first example we're going to look at was a procure to pay process, where the complete end-to-end process was automated, including ties into their ERP system, which in this case was SAP, uh, creating purchase orders automatically, getting all the approvals necessary, and making sure that everything got updated as needed from a data standpoint. So for this particular case, this resulted in a 35% reduction in the PO cycle, a 90% reduction in paperwork, and it gave them a 360-degree view of the data related to this process, which is something that they did not have previously. One other case in the manufacturing industry as well, using in this case, artificial intelligence and machine learning. That's what AI and ML stands for there. In this case, over 2,500 invoices were received weekly in various formats, and it took a team of over 6 full-time employees to transcribe the data manually into their ERP, again, SAP. Obviously, there's a lot of human errors possible with that much manual work being done, and automating this all using our bots resulted in a 90% reduction, 1,000 staff hours saved per month, and 100% reduction in the manual errors because nothing was really being done manually anymore. Okay, now we're going to go ahead into a demo. And to do this, I have to switch my screen here. So bear with me for a second while I do that. Okay, great. So you should be seeing a screen pop up now that shows a robot shaking a human's hand. I know I told you that RPA is not physical robots, but it's hard to make a picture of something that's not physical. So that's why we show a physical robot here. So let's just walk through this. This essentially is our system where you log in through the control center. And when you log into that system, you have the ability to create templates that could be either structured, unstructured, or semi-structured, depending on the source material that you're bringing in. So in this case, we're going to be creating a semi-structured template for processing invoices. And what that means is that once you set this up and you say which data you want to receive into your systems, then any invoices that come in that have those same data fields, even if they don't look exactly the same, they're not from the same supplier, those will all work. So once you set up all the fields that you're looking for, you also select a sample form, a PDF, and then you go through the process of matching up each field that you're looking for, as well as the data on that sample invoice. And this is what trains the bot to learn how to find the data that you're looking for. Now you see that it's not just the data that's in the header, but even the tabular data, you can grab line item by line item, and you go through the mapping process the same way. And then you just give the bot a clue to know where the table is ending. And then the template creation process is done. And this is something that you only have to do one time. And then once you have it set up, you're able to process multiple invoices. So you could see in this case, we're going to take that template that we've used, and we're going to process 3 different invoices from 3 different vendors using that same template, and you can see what the results will look like. So we're going to log in now as if we are a person who is responsible for reviewing the work that the bot has done. And typically you wouldn't have to do this, because if the bot is confident in the data that has been extracted, it will just go on to whatever the next step in the process is. But for the purposes of this demo, we're showing you that there is a human review step which is possible. where the human is able to see the work that was done by the bot, and if necessary, make whatever corrections need to be made right on the screen there. And then once everything has been verified as correct, just click on the button that says complete task at the bottom, and then it will move on to the next step in the process. And so you could see in this case, really everything has been extracted correctly, but if it hadn't been, you could just highlight whichever fields were incorrect and make the corrections that are needed. Okay, so let's switch back to the presentation. And if you have any questions on the demo that I showed, or just in general, feel free to enter those into, excuse me, into the question window. And if we don't have the chance to get to those during the webinar itself, we will certainly follow up with you via email afterwards. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit more about how the technology side of this works. In the RPA software, we have three different components. One is the studio, which is a portal environment, or a studio is a development environment that's used to set up the automations that you saw on the screen. And we didn't walk through that in the demo. That's separate from the process of creating the templates. The studio is used for creating the automation itself. And if you're interested in how that works, that's something that we could also show you separately. Then the control center is the piece that we did see in the demo. That's a portal application. It's web-based, and what you see is based on who you log in as. So in the case of the demo that we just walked through, when we first logged in, we were logging in as the administrator because we were manually starting the process. And then after we ran the automation and we saw that the invoices were processed, we logged in as the person responsible for doing the reviews. And then we were able to see those review tasks where it would show the original PDF invoice or scanned in invoice, as well as the data that was extracted, and give us the opportunity to make any corrections that were needed. That's all done in the control center. The control center is also where all your bots are deployed and managed and scheduled. It's where you have all your reporting and your dashboarding, and really all of the management of the bots is a built-in piece of the control center. And then the last piece is the bots and the humans, the ones that are actually doing the tasks. There are lots of different kinds of bots. Well, I say lots of different, but there are three different kinds of bots. We don't really need to dwell on that right now. And then the humans we include on there because, as I said before, within Nividus RPA, you have the ability to not just look at the automated tasks, but look at the full end-to-end process that includes the automated tasks that are performed by the bots, as well as the human tasks, so that you're able to get better reporting and dashboarding and better data created on that complete end-to-end process. Here's a look at how the smart bots work in terms of some of the different features and functionalities that they have. Smart bots can be used as chat bots. They can also do computer vision, which is just a fancy way of saying that they can deal with images as well as text data. So that is how it works when you have an invoice that is physical and it gets scanned in and the computer doesn't really know what the print is on the page. Sometimes you hear that called OCR. OCR is one technology and one way of doing that. Computer vision is another approach that is taken often for just on-screen images is when they are calling it computer vision. And then natural language processing, which includes understanding spoken text as well as turning printed text into spoken text and other more complicated things like personality and tone analysis. And then the final piece up there is machine learning, which is helping the bots to learn and make better decisions based on things that have already happened. And then on the other side of that, being able to do predictive analytics, where they're able to get a better sense for how something might turn out in the future based on looking at the data of what's happened in the past. All right, so just to kind of give you a brief summary of what Nimbus RPA brings to the table versus other RPA systems out there. We have lots of bots out there that are in production for lots of different companies, and our intelligent bots are using a lot of cutting edge technology to make it so that more things can be automated and that things can be automated quickly. One of the interesting things, even though it's not on the slide, but it's important to point out, is that the researchers in this field say that the real cost of implementing this technology is not the licensing cost for the technology, but it's the cost to implement and support that makes the biggest difference. And based on what we are seeing from an implementation standpoint, we are without equal in speed to implement our solutions. So I think that that not only means a lot to you in terms of how quickly you can get up and running, but can also be a great determining factor when it comes to cost. So when you look at the licensing costs of the systems that are out there, just remember that it's not just the licensing that you care about, but also it's the implementation costs and ongoing support costs that can be making a big difference in the long term. Our system is also extensible. So even though you don't need any programming abilities in-house to use it, if you do have programming abilities in-house and you're wanting to do more than what the system does, or you're wanting to change it in certain ways, you have the ability to do that. But as I said, it's not required. Also secure and scalable in that really all of the security that relates to your underlying systems, that same thing will be true for the bots that are working on your system as well. So one of the ways we tell people to think about it from a security standpoint is think of it as if you're hiring a new worker. When you hire a new worker, you sit them down at a workstation where they have a login and they have certain security and credentials set up based on the role that they're performing. That same thing is true for the bots that you bring into the organization. And so the same security will apply to those bots as it does to your human workers. And then the human bot work orchestration, as I already mentioned, using our platform, you're able to manage both of those seamlessly and also report on them from an end-to-end standpoint. Okay, so that's really all I have in terms of the uh, content for today, but I do have a couple of minutes left here to answer some of the questions that I know that you have posed. So let me see what we have here. We have, I have a URL that appends data daily. I want to maintain a cursor position, pick the data, and poke it into a spreadsheet, adding a new line each time I invoke uh, to the source. My source has 3 lines. I import these, but the bot needs to go to the source, and at the end of each day where it might discover there are now 12 rows. Okay, so it's a very complicated example, but it's pretty simple to answer. So one of the things that makes this whole process very easy from an implementation standpoint in terms of how you build these automations is that you really do it in the same way a human worker would do it. So as you sit down and you look at this case, where you have these spreadsheets, that you're wanting to put data into, and maybe the data is coming from multiple different sources, and you want to make sure that it's going into the right spot in the spreadsheet and that everything gets appended correctly and you're able to produce the proper spreadsheet at the end of the day. If a human is able to do that, then the bot will be able to do that the same way. Okay, so I know we're out of time here. So if you want better examples of that, we can certainly follow up with you after the fact on this question. And I apologize for the questions that we were not able to get to. And we will certainly follow up with all of you as well. But for now, I'll thank you for your time and turning things back over to Shaylee to close things out.
Thank you so much, Alan, for sharing useful information and interesting demo around invoice process automation. I hope everybody could gain some insights on the topic. Please reach out to us at contactus@nividus.com with your specific concerns if you have, and we would love to help you in whatever ways we can. Thank you. Thank you for your time.